Hello, and welcome back to the Calm and Connected podcast. I'm your host, Janine Halloran, and on today's episode, I get a chance to speak with Sarah Moore. So she is a master trainer of conscious parenting, and she's also the author of Peaceful Discipline, a new book that we get a chance to spend a lot of time chatting about. And we talk about her story teaching that she speaks of in the book, and we talk about trusting your gut and connection. We have a great conversation, so I hope you enjoy. Thank you. Sarah, thanks so much for coming on the Calm and Connected podcast.
I am excited to chat with you again, Janine. You are a gift.
Thank you so much. You're so sweet. So you and I know each other, but for people who may not know of you and your work, could you just give a little background about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the author of Peaceful Discipline, Story Teaching, Brain Science, and Better Behavior. I am the founder of Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting. I am a master trainer of conscious parenting. I train families all around the world for that. I personally am trained in everything from interpersonal neurobiology to trauma recovery to improv comedy and child development. So I have a wide range of tools from which to draw and to do this work. And most importantly, I'm a real life mama. So I am doing this work and I can't just have the intellectual knowledge. I actually have to do it in real life too. So I'm right there with you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the things, I actually also have your book and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was phenomenal. One of the things I love in terms of just your bio is how you even got interested in doing parenting because of an interaction you had with a pediatrician, correct?
Yes, exactly. Oh, yeah, I still get chills when I think about that story. It's almost a decade old now, but at my daughter's 4-month well check, standard well check visit for a baby, we went in and the doctor looked at me and said, "So how's sleep going?" And, she was 4 months old. There wasn't a lot of sleep, right? So I said, "She's still up every couple of hours, but holistically, she's getting plenty of sleep. I'm not worried about it." And he looked me in the eye and he said, "You're ridiculous. Don't ever go to her when she cries. She's manipulating you. Let me know when you're ready to get serious about parenting." Well, we know the nervous system can do a lot of different things. Mine froze in that moment. I was speechless. I didn't know what to do. We finished the appointment, never went back, by the way, found a totally different, more responsive and better educated pediatrician. But he lit a fire in my belly that day to get serious about parenting in a totally different way than what he intended. So that was really the genesis of Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting, because I wanted to empower other parents to say, how can I have a connection-based, responsive relationship with my child where everyone gets to thrive?
Yes, absolutely. And here's the thing. It's so interesting because, when you become a parent, you sort of get this like gut feeling, right? Like this just doesn't feel right to me. This doesn't feel like something that makes sense for me or my baby. It doesn't work. It's not helpful. Like no matter what advice it is, it's sort of like, how do you do this gut check? And you had a gut check moment right there.
Oh, big time. Yes. Like a gut check make me want to throw up. Excuse me if that's gross, but like I was not ready for that.
No. And it's so strange to think about that because, I think about my children at 4 months old. So one was sleeping through the night and he's still a phenomenal sleeper. And my first one was not like that. She didn't sleep she still doesn't sleep through the night sometimes. Like she's 15 and she doesn't sleep through the night. And that's just how they are. They're different. And you have to sort of adjust to who you've got in front of you and what is going to work for them, but also to like make it so that it doesn't feel bad for you as a parent. You want to do something that feels good when you're working through all these like really challenging sleepless nights.
Yes, exactly. And I love that you touched on parenting that also we can feel good about. Literally, one of my opening chapters is how to teach in ways that are effective, but don't make us feel like jerks. Because you touched on a beautiful point a second ago here, Janine, where you said, we want to feel good about a parenting at the end of the day. And there are so many methods out there that may work, and I use that term very loosely because they might drive behavioral change, but we feel terrible about it. Our kid feels terrible about it, and it does nothing for the long-term relationship that we actually want to have with our child.
Yeah, and what I find so interesting about your book is that you not only are thinking through things that are working for your child, but you're also doing this research as well, which I think there can be missing in pieces of what people are doing. It's great to, and I am all about like, let's try something. That's all what I do about coping skills is like, let's try something. Does it work? Does it not work? But when you're thinking like big picture, long term, and I think you need to look at the research and see what it says, and then take also into consideration your experiences, your child, your own desires and needs and wants, and the way that you're feeling about it as well. So there's all these pieces, but I love that you are pulling in that research as well. I think that's really neat that you were able to do that. And hearing from all of these experts who have done a ton of research around parenting and connecting and what's the best way to go about doing this.
Thank you so much. And I share your opinion about that. I know that there's no shortage of research about how to do things, and there's also no shortage of opinions, but it's fairly rare that the two actually meet. So, what I really want to do is be a translator for people and say, this is how the research actually makes sense in real life, so that when I'm talking with my childcare provider or my in-laws or even my husband or whoever it may be, somebody who says, well, the way that I did it is better, I can actually have a research evidence-based response that is compassionate, but that also makes a lot of sense to our hearts too.
Yes, and that's what really is evidence-based, so people will focus a lot on the research, but actually you also need to include, how it actually impacts you as the person who is doing it and the child as the person who might be who is also involved in this relationship. How is it working for the two of you? If it could be research-based but not work for you, and that's okay. It's just trying to figure out what will work for you and also what makes the most sense clinically, like what works, what does research say, and so it's an interesting sort of thing to make sure that you're doing both, and I love that you're doing that you're really being that translator. That's really neat.
Thank you very much, because I know that probably just like you, it doesn't do me any good to read just the research without knowing how to apply it. It also doesn't do me any good to just follow my gut, because I might be bringing forward my family of origin junk, or I might be bringing forward some old message I heard from who knows where. So I really want it to be accessible in a way that's going to be meaningful for families to know I know what to do and why.
Yes, absolutely. And so you talk a lot about consequences, and I think you mentioned that a little bit ago. So the consequences, why do so many not work long term? Like they can be kind of helpful in the short term, but when we're thinking big picture long term, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so a couple of misconceptions about consequences. First of all, people often mistakenly think that consequence is a synonym for punishment, when really a consequence only means it's something that happens as a result of something else. So, a consequence of my talking with you today is I feel good because I like you. That is also a consequence. So, we have to remember that consequences can be positive, and likewise with our children, when I have a day where I don't yell, when I have a day when I get enough sleep or do whatever I need to do to take care of myself, I can parent more peacefully in an easier way because I'm resourced to do it. That is a positive consequence of the things I've done to take care of myself. That being said, consequences also apply to children in positive ways. A consequence of peaceful discipline, of peaceful teaching, is my child can actually learn better. Because when we parent from fear-based strategies, what we know about the brain is that the learning part of the brain essentially shuts off. A child who is scared cannot learn. They might change their behavior. They might say, okay, I won't do that thing, but their nervous system literally cannot internalize, this is why I'm making the change. And when the situation comes up again, do I actually know how to handle handle it. The learning brain is off when they're scared. So what we can do is we can find ways to teach and that have positive consequences in ways that do no harm, where the child feels that emotional safety. We also know, and here's the other part of consequences that's really important for people to know, that a lot of consequences that are punitive actually do not result in the kind of behavioral change that we are seeking. There was a beautiful study, and I talk about it in the book, where there were a couple of different schools. And in one school, punitive measures were typically taken against the children. In the other school, non-punitive measures were typically taken. Well, a researcher came in and essentially did, for lack of a better term, an honesty test for the children. And when the results came back, they learned that not only were the students of the non-punitive school more honest, but the students of the punitive school were less honest, and they were better liars. They were better about hiding their behavior. So what do we know about this from parenting then? When we punish our children, they basically learn how to hide their behavior from us because we are no longer their safe place. And my ultimate goal in parenting and writing Peaceful Discipline and doing this work is to create a dynamic where when our child inevitably messes up, because they're human, just like we adults mess up too, when our child messes up, they say, I need to run to my parent for support rather than I need to hide from my parent and keep it from them.
Yes, absolutely. I found that so interesting because I see that when you have when you have that sort of punitive way of thinking, it does go underground. It can look, and here's the thing, it can look very similar on the surface. So you think you've taken care of the problem, but what you've done is created kids who are really good at hiding stuff and are not going to be willing to talk with you about things when they get hard, or when it's stressful, or when it's something really big and really challenging. I always say, like, you start with little kids and they have little problems, and then they turn into big kids with bigger problems. But if you want them to talk with you about the big problems, talk with them about the little problems when they're little. So,
Yes, yes. Hallelujah and amen, my friend. You are so right.
because that's really what it's about. I want kids to be able to come and say, this is really hard. This is something that happened that made me uncomfortable or made me scared. And when they're in first grade, it's usually pretty smaller in our viewpoint of things. When it's like 10th, 11th, 12th grade, those are big problems. Those are things we're going to have to talk with people about. But I want them to be able to talk with me about it. I want that for kids to be able to talk with a trusted adult and say, this is really worrying me. This is scary. I don't like it. Please help. I need support.
Yeah, I love that. Super quick, relatable example exactly on that topic. The other night, I was putting my daughter to bed, and she's 9.5 years old, and I told her she could read one story before going to sleep. And then she could, call me in and I would do the final nighttime stuff. So a little bit longer than usual went by, and she called me in, and I could tell something was up. Her vibe kind of changed or whatever. But after a couple of minutes, she kind of buried her head in my chest and she's like, Mama, I have to tell you, I read two stories. And I thought, oh my goodness, number one, why would I ever punish my child for double reading, right? But
Mhm.
number two, I was thinking, I am so thankful that she feels safe enough to confess that she read double stories, so that how this will translate when she is older is there's something else I'm afraid to bring to you, but I'm going to bring it to you anyway. And it filled me with so much love and gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. It's those funny little moments, that's going to be something that will stick with you, and it's very sweet and cute and so lovely that she was able to be like, "Oh gosh, I know I shouldn't have, but I just couldn't help it." And but then how does that translate when she becomes a teenager? She still comes and talks to you. Even though she and like might be hard, she still comes and talks to you. So that's incredible. One of the things that I really enjoyed in your book was you're talking about story teaching, and it seems so playful. And I love, I, as a person who absolutely loves playing and games, and that's kind of why I became a child therapist, because I get to play games all the time. Um, it's really a fun way to sort of introduce a challenge, introduce a situation, and talk about it in a different way, in a more playful way. So can you speak a little bit about what that looks like? I know it's huge, like you take a big chunk of your book to talk about it, but
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, the short version is there are three different ways that we can use stories to teach. One is proactively. So, we know something is going to happen and we want to help prepare our child for whatever it is. Number two is in the moment story teaching. Things might be going sideways right now, and we want to find a peaceful resolution. And then, thirdly, retroactive story teaching. Something has already happened, and we either want to repeat it because it was a good consequence, as we talked about a second ago, or we think, that didn't go how I wanted it to go. How can we do better next time? So, there are three different ways to do it. And before anybody thinks, well, I'm not creative, brain shut off, this isn't me. If you have a brain, you are a natural storyteller because our brain has a part called the hippocampus that basically records memories. It is your brain's storyteller. So it doesn't have to be tricky. You can talk about events from your day. That can be story teaching. It can be fact, it can be fiction, it can be something you literally read from a book. Hey, I remember we read that story about the boy who didn't want to share, whatever it was. But the other beautiful thing about it is that it has no upper age limit on when it stops working. My husband's 52. I still use versions of it with him sometimes. And the beautiful part here too is that when we teach through stories, it actually is more effective than teaching without stories because we help our children create a visual memory or a narrative to go along with it. So we don't have to be a broken record. They can easily access it, and the learning happens a lot easier that way.
yes, absolutely. Playing when you are playing and learning, it sticks longer, it lasts longer, the memory is stronger. It's, I mean, so much research around play and learning, and you've used that in that story teaching model. And it sort of reminds me, when I was reading your book, it kind of reminded me of Carol Gray's social stories, but like a more playful version of it. So like I would use social stories when my kids were younger. I've written social stories for kids as well, but the ones that stick out in my mind are the ones I've written for my own kids. So like going to the dentist or like going to the doctor, getting a shot, like all those things when they were little that they struggled with. But I think when I was thinking back on it, like I did try and do, like I sort of did story teaching like kind of naturally, like, oh, we're just being playful and we're getting through the time. And I did a lot of like of the pre-teaching story teaching. So like a lot of the preview, like something's coming up, we're going to have a hard time about this and let's deal with it. Like, let's just sort of nip it in the bud before we get going on that. So I thought it was really like a great way to introduce story teaching, and the fact that you give examples at the end, so you have like really much more simple stories versus like much more flowery complex stories, so people know you don't have to be like, you have to use all these adjectives, like you can make it super simple.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, just the other day, I had a mama contact me and she said, I need help. My son is refusing to blow his nose. He's got a cold and it's gross. I'm like, okay, every parent in the world, raise your hand if you've been there. It's one of the least pleasant parts of parenting. And I was like, she's like, do you have a story that can help me? And I was like, honestly, no, I haven't made one up yet, but let's work together. And we came up with, well, what if instead of a Kleenex, what if we called a magic carpet? And what if we want to give the germs a ride on the magic carpet? Well, next thing you know, you have a child who's not like, no, I refuse the Kleenex. Instead, it's like, magic carpet, tell me more, mama. And it just creates a more lighthearted approach to solving a problem. And that feels better for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. I think about one of my friends and colleagues, her husband actually used to sing a special song with the kids to get them to brush their teeth. And it's one of those things, like it could turn into a power struggle. Absolutely. But if you make it playful in a way that works for you, then that's great. So he used like some like really super popular like rock song, but he made it about teeth brushing. And I was like, that rock, that's amazing. They're like in there brushing away. And that's the thing. It's really about trying to connect with them to help them get to a place where they know, like, this is going to be helpful for you. We're not at odds here. I don't want to be at odds with you. These are things that are important and we just got to figure out how to do it, but let's do it together playfully.
Yes, exactly. And you just touched on another one of my passions when it comes to explaining this message. We really do have to remember that when any time a problem arises, it is not us versus our child. It's us with our child against whatever problem we're trying to solve. And it's a totally different collaborative view versus this power struggle thing you mentioned.
Yes, absolutely. When you sort of can make it the problem is the issue. It's actually what you do with anxiety as well. Like that anxiety is the issue. We're coming together to defeat the anxiety. We're coming together to manage whatever problem we're having. It makes a difference. And then it feels like you're together with it. It's just a different way, of a nicer way to think about how you can connect, how you can be together, and how you can work together to live life, because it is complicated and it is hard. Things are hard. Big feelings get big, and so how are we going to go through this together and do all of this?
Exactly. Yeah. And really, there's once again, no upper age limit on when we stop needing support. So oftentimes we as the parent is like, well, child's problem, child has to figure it out. But as an adult, I'm 48 years old, when I'm really struggling with something, what do? I talk to my husband, I call a friend, I seek out the support that I need because we all want to feel validated. We all need co-regulation. This stuff just doesn't expire.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just good relationship building skills. So it's that first relationship that they have with you, and you're working on that so that they can go out and have relationships and friendships with other people and potentially a life partner if that's what they want to do. So to be able to learn how to interact with others and make your to help each other and support each other, that's huge. That's what we're doing. We're trying to create people who are going to be able to be wonderful people in the world to be connected with.
Exactly. Yep. And you just touched on the beautiful ripple effect we can have when we raise children peacefully. They are the first ones to notice the injustices of the world. They are the first ones to say, why on earth is that person being treated that way? That's not okay. And I want to do something about it. So I firmly believe that healing the world begins at home when children know what peace actually feels like.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I could talk to you forever, but I want to be respectful of your time. So, where can people find your work? Where can they go to get information, to get the book? Where can they go?
Sure. So the book, once again, is Peaceful Discipline. It's available all over the place. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, tons of independent bookstores. So you should be able to find it almost anywhere you look. And as far as finding me, my website is dandelionseeds.com. There is a hyphen in there. So it's dandelion-seeds.com. On all of the socials, I'm Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting, except for on Instagram, I'm Dandelion Seeds Positive Living because parenting wouldn't fit. So there you have it. And I'm very real and very accessible at this point. I still love responding to messages and connecting with people and supporting them. So feel free to reach out because I'm doing this work alongside you.
Excellent. And so I will link to all of those in the show notes so people can be able to access where you are and to go over onto Amazon and potentially get Peaceful Discipline. So I have one more question for you. I always ask all my guests this. How do you cope with your stress, overwhelm, anxiety? What are your coping skills? What do you do to rest and recharge yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in being super duper proactive because I know that every single day is going to have some stress in it. So, a couple of things I do. One is before I get out of bed in the morning, I do some deep breathing. For me personally, I add in a prayer. I also say kind of a meditation that sounds like this. It's may I be peaceful, may I be present, may I be playful. It's just those three P's. And that is really how I ground myself so that before my foot even hits the floor getting out of bed, that is kind of the mindset that I am giving myself for the day. And throughout the day, when I need to check back in with it, I already kind of have the muscle memory of I started my day with this, I can circle back. And that's a lot easier than trying to backpedal and catch up with it.
Oh my gosh. May I say it again? I want to make sure I get it.
Yeah, may I be peaceful, may I be present, may I be playful.
Peaceful, present, playful. I love that. I love it. I love it.
Thank
Oh my
you.
goodness. That is amazing. And you know what? It does. It really makes a difference when you can start off the day in that frame of mind and then call yourself back to it, because the day will happen and things will go awry, but then you get yourself back on track when you have a mantra that you can call on, when you have sort of words of meditation that you can recall. Oh my goodness,
Exactly.
that's so amazing. Thank you
Oh, thank
so
you.
much. Oh, thank you so much for being on the Common Connected podcast. I appreciate it. I've really enjoyed talking with you. And just for everybody else, I want you to don't forget about yourself, take a few minutes, have a little fun, and have an awesome day.